Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video with On Point Politics. And today I'm going to be going over the GOP from the last decade and how Donald Trump actually made gains from the Republican Party and potentially saved them for the long-term future. If you guys enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you're new. And so this was the CNN battleground map on January 31st of 2012. Look at this. Colorado was a toss-up. New Mexico, Missouri was a toss-up. Indiana was a toss-up. North Carolina, Florida, New Hampshire. This entire battleground map puts Republicans at 159 and Democrats at 196. And I have it kind of laid out here. This is more so kind of my battleground map. At this point, you could probably lean Indiana and Missouri into the Republican column, and North Carolina probably would lean Republican too. However, Colorado would lean, Arizona would lean Republican at this point in time, and Pennsylvania would probably lean Democrat, with New Hampshire as well. So Mitt Romney was really sitting at about 206 electoral votes at the beginning, which is actually what he got. Obama basically won all the toss-up states, and Barack Obama was behind in Nevada, Iowa, Wisconsin, Ohio, Virginia, and Florida. Those were like the true battlegrounds. In my opinion, if we end up looking at the 2012 election, Obama ended up winning Ohio by 3 points, Virginia by 3.9%, and Florida by 0.88%. Colorado, Nevada, Iowa, all these states didn't even end up being really actual swing states. You could basically classify these as safe. So really, Obama was basically guaranteed the presidency from the very beginning. And what we can actually do is we can probably end up putting the safe margin for a party at like maybe 5 points, because at this point any state above 5 is really not even in the toss-up category. You could possibly put likely as maybe 2, like maybe this is the case, maybe it'll be like 4 or something like that, and lean is like 2. But really, this is effectively what a battleground map would basically look like. All the lean states would effectively be Colorado, Iowa, Ohio, and actually we could probably put both of these here and have just kind of the lean states pretty much just show up. And effectively, this was your battleground map in 2012. Colorado, Iowa, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, Florida. These were effectively the toss-up races back then. So really, Republicans were not in a good spot. Obama was basically guaranteed Wisconsin. He was guaranteed Nevada at that point, Arizona. All of these states were basically classified as GOP victories back then. And your battleground map basically looked like this. Back then, Obama sitting at 191 electoral votes in this scenario. And really, Mitt Romney would have had to have won Florida, Ohio, North Carolina, and Virginia and still not be there. He would have needed to have picked up Iowa at this point. He would have probably needed, Colorado at this point, more than likely to win the presidency. New Hampshire would have barely gotten him there, but he would have had to have run up the score in the swing states in order to barely win the presidential election at that time. If we go to 2016, we'll see that, yes, there are actual swing states here, and we'll see that even here, they kind of had Trump starting at 126. They were even saying that Missouri was going to be competitive, and South Carolina, Montana, and Utah were going to be competitive back then, but we know that was not necessarily the case. Even CNN had the map with Utah being a toss-up, Arizona, Ohio, North Carolina being a toss-up, which was just ridiculous even back then. And so, according to this map, pretty much, Iowa, Colorado was in the toss-up category because it was under 6. Texas was not in the toss-up category at that point in time. Florida was, though. If we keep looking, we'll see that Iowa and Ohio are basically gone for the Democrats. But even back then, a lot of people thought that they were in play, which put Republicans really at a base of 126. So Donald Trump, even compared to 2016, was really making gains for the GOP because he was actually able to kind of up their floor a tiny bit in some swing states. And so looking at the electoral map, even like Maine second, he was able to kind of put into the safe Republican column at the time. And so this is effectively what an expanded battleground electoral map pretty much looked like. And you had Nebraska second up for grabs. This is basically what it looked like back then. Trump and the Democrat were basically even in 2020 at this point in time. And what's actually quite funny is that in 2020, they still didn't give Trump the benefit of the doubt in Texas. They had Colorado as safe Democrat. They had Virginia as a foregone conclusion. Minnesota was foregone. New Hampshire was basically foregone. Maybe these would lean into the Democratic column, but Virginia and Colorado were basically safe at that point in time. Michigan was like leaning Democrat with Pennsylvania in there. Maine at large was basically gone for the GOP, as well as Nebraska second. Meanwhile, Texas was lean Republican, and Georgia, they had it leaning Republican with like Arizona. So at this point, the Democrat had a very, very straightforward path to winning the presidency. All they really needed was Nevada, and if they had enough people in the House, they could just straight up win the election right then and there. And according to the expanded battleground map, this is really what you were looking at in 2020 as an effective battleground map for 2020 and 2016. This was basically your expanded battleground map back then. So states like Florida were up for grabs, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona. The Rust Belt was up for grabs, but Republicans still had a low floor. And you'd even see in 2020, CNN gave Trump Texas and Iowa, but didn't give him Florida, which he should have had in his column. I mean, if he was winning it by 3, losing it in an election year, you'll see in 2020, Trump lost it by about 3%. Back then, he won it, by 3%. Texas was right below, the battleground, margin. So effectively, this was the battleground map in 2016. And really in 2020, the battleground map was looking a lot more favorable to Democrats. Democrats had a lot more states kind of just locked up for them. Even Nebraska second was out of the picture for the Democrat or for the Republican. And so that put Trump at a pretty low point in the Electoral College, but he would have ended up winning Texas and Florida by margins that necessarily wouldn't have put him in jeopardy in those states. And so the real swing state map at this point would have probably ended up looking like this. And then in 2024, you'll see that Trump at this point has Texas locked up. He has Florida locked up at this point. Even North Carolina, to an extent, is locked up. If you look at the state here, he won it by 1.3% in 2020. And so that really puts the margin here at a really interesting point, because if Biden couldn't even win it in 2020 when everything went right for him and he won almost all the swing states, then at this point, there is no way that Biden would be able to win it with the approval rating he does. And even a Democrat nationally may even struggle in North Carolina. And a Democrat nationally would definitely not win Texas and Florida. And so that puts Republicans at 235, with Democrats stuck at 209, basically a little bit lower than what they were before, basically kind of losing Minnesota, New Hampshire, Maine at large, and Nebraska is second in their column. So all Trump really has to do is win Georgia and Pennsylvania, and they get the Electoral College. And even Republicans nationwide effectively we're pretty much at a point where they could really win, Pennsylvania and Georgia, and they get to 270 electoral votes. The battleground map for Republicans looks significantly better, and you'll see, when you compare, 2012 to 2020, you're going to see, okay, these states got significantly more Democrat, like Georgia, Arizona. So basically what Trump said is, okay, I'm going to lose some ground in, Arizona, Georgia, and stuff like that. He'll lose ground in Texas. However, and Trump has gained in Florida over time. Alaska, minimal shifts that way. And if we look, but the Rust Belt is looking significantly better for him. And so if you were to look at this from a, actual margin standpoint, so like plus 10, and if you looked at, a plus 5 shift, and then you looked at lean as like 1, this is effectively what the swing map from 2012 to 2020 looked like. So even though he's lost some support in some of the Sun Belt, for the most part, this margin's pretty inflated because the third-party candidates were really throwing off some of the shifts here. But you can see that Biden, the Democrats have been stagnant in like Oregon and Washington. Idaho, for whatever reason, has shifted like a point Democrat. And there have been minimal gains for the GOP and some states were like Wyoming, Utah, some of the Appalachian, states. But the Rust Belts where Trump has really made gains, and even New York, Trump's actually shifted that by 5 points. And so the Democrats are at a way lower point because now, yeah, they get Colorado, they get New Mexico, they get Virginia, but Trump has basically locked up Texas, Florida, which is 70 electoral votes that Democrats were basically sort of in play for, and even North Carolina to an extent. So now that Democrats are not necessarily, super close in reach there, the Republicans have a much higher floor, and their electoral prospects in the future are going to look a lot better than they would have in past years. Even CNN's electoral map for 2024 actually has Michigan leaning Republican. They actually have Michigan leaning towards the GOP in this scenario. And what's actually quite funny is that if you were to look at the latest prediction that I have, where you kind of have Donald Trump winning by a pretty big amount, all of the traditional swing states would effectively not be swing states. All of these states are decided by over 6-point victories, and that would open up, New Mexico, that open up Minnesota, that open up even like a state like, Colorado would even be, right above the 6-point margin. But Illinois would enter battleground status just off the way that we've been doing it here, with all the basically non-toss-up states basically being safe by over 6 points. Illinois, according to my model, only votes for Biden by 5 points. That puts it in the battleground category. Virginia is below a 5-point margin. New Jersey, even to an extent, is right above a 5-point margin. That puts it in the toss-up category as well. And so you can see that Donald Trump, according to my model, if we were to do it kind of based off of how we've done it here, where all the safe states and the battleground maps are over 6-point victories for either party, Donald Trump, according to the latest model, is already guaranteed victory based off of a battleground map, and has a potential of picking up several swing states like Illinois, Minnesota, Virginia, New Jersey, New Hampshire, Maine at large, Nebraska second. Now, I think Illinois would lean Democrat in a battleground map, so would New Jersey, and maybe even to an extent Maine at large, but that leaves you with a decent amount of states for Republicans to really pick up in the electoral map. It really leaves them up for grabs in many states. You could maybe, be generous to the Democrats and kind of put these in the lean category per se, but that still gives Donald Trump 312 electoral votes. Maybe Michigan is not, necessarily a leaning Republican state, maybe neither Pennsylvania. But even then, Republicans this year with Trump have a way higher floor than they would have in years past. And so Donald Trump is in an extremely good position to win 2024, and he's basically saved the GOP. You're talking about this being an expanded battleground map effectively. Let's be generous and actually just give Trump 262. Let's say that this is the battleground map compared to before, where Republicans were at 191 and Barack Obama was at 233. Now the Democrat sits at 193 electoral votes, presumably incumbent President Joe Biden, whereas Trump sits at 262 right off the gate, and he really only needs a certain amount of swing states. He can win with Nevada and Nebraska second. He can win with Wisconsin. He can win with Wisconsin. He can win with Minnesota. He can win with Nevada, and he can win with New Hampshire. He could win Pennsylvania. He could win Virginia. He's got several paths to victory, whereas Biden really has to run up the score, electorally this year to even get a chance at winning the Electoral College. This basically puts him at a tie here, and so he'd basically have to win all of the toss-up states except for like 3 of them in order to really even win the Electoral College. So as of right now, an expanded battleground map for 2024 is basically looking like this, which looks crazy to even see Illinois and New Jersey be under 6-point victories for the Republican Party. And so that puts Donald Trump at an extremely good position to be winning the Electoral College very, very easily in this election cycle. And so if you guys did enjoy the video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, make sure to go ahead and follow the Twitter and join the Discord in the description down below, and I will see you guys very, very soon.